Welcome to the Compendium Podcast, hosted by Leadership Books. In just moments, our host, Michael Stickler, will be joining us with a very special guest. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Michael. He's a 4-time best-selling author, philanthropist, publisher, and highly sought-after conference speaker. His passion is to see life-changing books find their audience. Books that will change your life, change your business, and change your soul. And he specializes in helping authors and business owners achieve publishing success. Won't you please welcome Michael Stickler?
Well, thank you, Ron, for the great introduction. Yes, I'm Mike Stickler, and this is the Compendium Podcast, where we gather authors and spiritual leaders, consultants, speakers from around the world, and allow them to just kind of share some key moments, some key elements that would help improve your life, your family, your spiritual life, your business, and your community. And today we have a pretty special guy on. He's connecting with us from down under. His name is Jaemin Frazer. He's an author, he's a TEDx speaker, and he's a coach. He's the founder of the Insecurity Project, and it specializes in helping entrepreneurs, leaders, and business owners eradicate insecurity so they can show up to life unhindered by doubt, fear, and self-limiting beliefs. He is widely recognized as one of Australia's best life coaches and leading voice globally on the subject of personal insecurity. Jaemin is the author of the book that we're going to talk about today, Unhindered: The 7 Essential Practices for Overcoming Insecurity and Elegantly Simple Solutions to Complex People Problems. And the voice behind the popular 1-Minute Coach radio segment heard by over 750,000 listeners daily. Jaemin, welcome to the Compendium Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike. It's great to be here.
I'm thrilled to get to this subject because it's one that I just really see so much of in modern life, is just this idea of insecurity, whether it's business or in family. It seems like people just haven't grown up and become their own person. Is that really what I'm seeing, or is there much more to it than that?
No, you're right. People have not grown up exactly, but they haven't woken up either. I think that's the central problem. People live very unconscious lives. They exist, they survive in the midst of dysfunction. Self-awareness is seen as very scary and a daunting subject. And so because they don't wake up and examine the structure of their life, then they can't grow up. So I think those two ideas very much go hand in hand together. And it's a big part of the work that I do.
So in your book, Unhindered, what was the big idea? What was the premise? Why did you choose to write on this subject?
Yeah, I kind of was ruined for anything else. I love transformation, and I have an aversion to behavior management. Mm-hmm. So I'm a very pragmatic person, so I love to know what works. And I realized that behavior is just the end of the assembly line. So I had to help people deal with beliefs. And I looked at the beliefs that were always getting in the way, and they were always self-limiting beliefs about identity, value, and worth. So the big hindrance in life is always insecurity. It's this fear that I'm going to be found out as lacking or inadequate or not valuable. So the big idea was I'm actually convinced insecurity is a solvable problem. Most people just mask it or manage it, even medicate it. I'm convinced it's a very predictable problem with a very predictable solution, and that there are people who have found out how to show up to life unhindered by doubt, fear, and insecurity. And so my life's work was to deconstruct the path that they'd walked and to make a model of how they'd done it so that I could replicate it personally, and so I could show others how to do that as well.
So when you started to deconstruct it, what did you find?
Yeah, I was really astounded by what I found, because the number one discovery was about a real misdirection. Misdirection is a magician's only trick. If they can get you focusing on their left hand, they can do anything with their right hand, and you think it's magic. And so when I hear people talk about their life, there's so much misdirection around what has caused them to be stuck. They're convinced all the action took place over here in what happened to them or what was said to them or what was done to them. But the big discovery was that was a trick. That was an illusion. All the action took place within our own sense making. We're not the actor in the story, we're the storyteller. And so insecurity was not an issue, was not something that had been created outside of people by somebody else. Insecurity at its core is an opinion problem. And we are the ones that created our own opinions of ourselves. And so when I understood that the core of the issue was an opinion problem, and then more specifically, the opinion problem of a child, i.e. opinions formed a long time ago, often before 7 years of age, opinions are the lowest form of knowing anything, and so therefore the easiest thing to change. So I realized, my goodness, this is solvable simply because it's a work of fiction created by a child that has just been unexamined by adults for the rest of their life. This has to be solvable.
So when you are working with somebody, whether it's an organization or an individual, how do you identify these insecurity, I don't know, I'm stumbling over the words here, but the insecurity issues that they might be experiencing?
Yeah. Well, I love Jordan Peterson's idea, be precise in your speech. I think that's such a brilliant idea. And many people are very abstract when it comes to their fear. So sometimes they've never even put any language around what they're afraid of. But then often at best, it stops with, I'm afraid of some kind of failure or some kind of rejection. But both those two labels are very abstract, because the only way to prevent yourself from failing is to never try. And the only way to stop being rejected is to never have an opinion, never put yourself out there or obsess about pleasing everyone in your world. So I just help people by going one step further and saying, just be a bit more precise in your speech. If you were to fail, what's so terrible about that? If I was to fail, then I suppose it makes me a failure. Now it's personal. And if you were to be rejected, what are you actually afraid of about that? You're not afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of the personal implications of being rejected. If you were to be rejected, what does that say about you? That clearly I'm not worthy about love. So I'm not worthy of love. There's something inadequate with me. And so the focus is just accurate diagnosis. This is not some abstract fear that sits out here, or even the imposter syndrome. That's such an abstract way to describe insecurity. It's labeling it as something that's a syndrome, so it's out there. And imposter is sloppy language. What you're saying is you're afraid you are going to be found out as inadequate. You're actually most afraid of your own opinion of yourself. So that's a big part of my work, is that accurate diagnosis. Let's just shine the light here and be very, very clear about the exact nature of this problem, because the moment we do that, then this becomes solvable. Fear unexamined just grows, but fear examined is always diminished.
Yeah, that's amazing. In my own life, I recognize, somebody asked me, do you lie? And I said, it's funny, of course I lie, but I don't lie about the big things. I lie about silly things like, why was I late to a meeting? And when I evaluate that within myself, I come back saying, well, because I don't want people to think less of me that I couldn't get it together to make the meeting on time. And so I fabricate something. Is that what you're talking about? Those kinds of things?
Sure, it shows up in all kinds of insidious ways. But yeah, ultimately, I would say that the human condition is that we want to be good. We want to be seen as good. We want to feel like we're good, but we're afraid that we're actually bad. There's something wrong. There's something really evil or dark or bad about us. And for fear of that badness ever being exposed, we run or we hide. We set up these worlds so that we don't get found out. We either go on these heroic quests to prove that we're incredible by what we can achieve, or we hide in safe pockets of the world so we could never fail and never be exposed. So what I'm suggesting is, well, sure, the alternate path, rather than running or hiding, is to turn and face and go and examine the structure of this fear. What if it's actually just based on an opinion that you formed as a child? And if you were to examine that, you could realize that it's not true. Of course, you're valuable, worthwhile, lovely, adequate. You just have lived your life based on the opinion that's not true.
That's phenomenal. So when you've got a reader reading deep into your book, what are they going to take away?
They're going to take a roadmap. I'm very pragmatic. I love to bring an engineering brain to this. So I think most people think their behavior is really messy and mysterious and weird and coincidental. You'll read this book and you'll go, hang on a minute, there's actually far more structure to my world than I ever thought. There's patterns of behavior. And if you can identify patterns, well, then if there's patterns, there must be an intention behind that pattern. And if there's an intention, well, that intention can be understood and deconstructed. And if it's deconstructed, well, then it can be reconstructed. So if you kind of understand your world with some more awareness in a judgment-free space, you'll see that, of course, you're stuck. Of course, you're holding yourself back. Of course, there's issues in your health and your finance and your assertiveness. You're holding yourself back in terms of your potential. You're undervaluing yourself, all because there's these unresolved opinions you formed about yourself back from when your parents got divorced, or when you got bullied when you were at school, or when that thing didn't work out the way that it wanted, or that person said this thing. You've created these maps of the world for yourself, and they're just operating exactly the way you designed them to. So there's actually nothing strange or broken or weird about your world. So you read this book and go, my goodness, there is so much structure, and that's going to change the game, because structure can be deconstructed and reconstructed if you just know the way. All you need to solve any problem is the proven framework, and someone's skillful enough to hold you in the space until it works. So this one subject, insecurity, I've devoted my life to thinking about it clearly. And that's what you'll find in the book, some clear thinking about a difficult problem.
When the reader closes the book, what do you want them to take as an action?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Because I often have the feedback that practice 1 is perhaps the most difficult of all the 7. Practice 1 is to step into the light, and to be precise. It's to actually name your fear. It's to see this is not an imposter syndrome problem. It's not a health problem. It's not an anxiety problem. It's rooted in your own opinion of yourself. So I say to people, you only actually need courage to start this journey, because you think there's this massive monster in a cave waiting to slay you if you would go and face it. But every step you take closer, you realize it's just a couple of mice playing tricks on you, hiding in the cave with some candles and some tin cans, projecting this huge shadow on the wall. There's actually nothing real to your fear when you go and have a look at it. So the encouragement to readers is it just takes a moment of courage to be willing to begin the process, to actually stop running, stop hiding, go and discover, is it true? Who am I really? Am I adequate or not? Is this true, these opinions I've formed about me, or are they false? And there's only one way to find out. You have to go have a look.
Wow. That and of course that first step leads to all the other.
Of course it does. You're in the game, and you soon find yourself that you're too far in to turn back, which is the classic hero's journey metaphor. You know, Frodo's not sure what he's signing up for at the beginning, but he begins with a yes. And then sooner or later, he's so far from the Shire, turning back isn't even an option.
Right.
So I find people in their own hero's journey going, I'm going to go confront the deepest fears I have about myself. You begin that process with courage, you track forward, and pretty soon you're like, well, I'm ruined for ordinary anyway. I've seen too much, I've understood too much. So the classic hero's journey conundrum is the hero either dies or comes out the other side transformed.
Yeah.
So people are like, well, I either discover that it's true, I'm worthless, I'm no good, I'm terrible, and then I don't recover from that. Or I discover it was just a work of fiction created by a scared 4-year-old, and it's all going to be okay. And then you come outside transformed, and then you bring your gift to the world, and we all win.
Yeah, I have a good friend who came to a real crisis point in his life, and it was complex and it was scary. And I said to him, "What are you going to do?" And he looked at me and he said, "I know too much to turn back now."
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what you're talking about. This is great. So Jaemin, how do people reach out to you? What are you doing beyond being an author?
Yeah, so the podcast of my own is a way that I communicate with people around the world. The Insecurity Project podcast. I have 3 different types of episode. Each week I do 10-minute Tuesday. So I don't know if you know the band Switchfoot from San Diego. One of their lyrics has stuck with me the moment I heard it. If we're adding to the noise, please turn off this song. And so, I do this 1 minute radio segment I have done for years around Australia, and I get 60 seconds to share something of value. And I think that 60 seconds, that's sacred space. If I'm going to open my mouth and say something, it has to be worthwhile. It has to be not just adding to the noise, because there's a lot of noise out there. So then I've my podcast, I have a 10-minute Tuesday episode. So it's like straight to the point. I want to give you something high quality that's going to be different from the lightweight, fluffy personal development stuff you might be hearing elsewhere. So yeah, that's something you can find, or there's some live coaching sessions on there, or I interview some people who are doing some great stuff in the world as a result of overcoming their insecurity. There's books that people can find. I'm quite active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Otherwise, you can find me at my website, jaeminfrazer.com.
And of course, they can get a copy of your book, Unhindered, right here on the link below, or maybe it's the link above, but somewhere right here on this page, you can get a copy of his book and get started on that. And of course, on the Leadership Books website, we're going to be posting more and more of Jaemin's incredible messages from down under here in the United States and North America. We're pretty excited about our partnership together, Jaemin. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm excited too. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share more about overcoming insecurity.
I can't wait how it's going to help change our world up here, especially. For the rest of you, thank you for joining us. The Compendium Podcast is a short, precise little section where we bring authors, speakers, consultants, people, spiritual leaders together to make a difference in your life. You can find our broadcasts every Monday and Wednesday on this channel or several other channels. So we want to make sure that you participate in hearing from another really world changer. So until next time, may God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. I do hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And be sure to visit us online at leadershipbooks.store. There you'll find the works of some of the finest thought leaders today. And be sure to tune in here each week to gain even deeper insights from one of those leaders on the Compendium Podcast.